President Trump closing out his first full week in office with a trip to the Pentagon to meet with the Joint Chiefs of Staff and take part in a ceremonial swear-in of his Defense Secretary, General James Mattis. Now, after the ceremony, the president signed new executive actions at the Defense Department.
First, I'm signing an executive action to begin a great rebuilding of the armed services of the United States, developing a plan for new planes, new ships, new resources, and new tools for our men and women in uniform. Secondly, I'm establishing new vetting measures to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of the United States of America. We don't want them here.
The latter order temporarily halts the flow of refugees into the United States and stops all entry from some predominantly Muslim nations. All right, a big day, Dana. You like to spend at the first part of that.
I'm for spending more on defense. Like, go for it. I love it. Modernize, give them what they need. I love that. We've talked a lot about this anticipated order that he did today. I think everybody can find a soft spot in their heart for refugees. They're not wanting to come here for a reason. They are refugees because they're being forced to flee terrible situations. And I hope that in doing this halting, we can improve the system, but at the same time make some commitments to help people where they are so that they don't become refugees in the first place.
All right, so to prevent it from happening to beginning. So what do you think, Eric? The defense spending aspect of it, do you like that? Modernize, upgrade the technology and the resources?
Yeah, and he promised to do that. Candidate Trump promised that would be one of the first orders of business, and it is. And we're finding out this has been a dizzying week for first orders of business. He's been very, very busy. I agree with you guys that a must see. But I'm reading through this executive order on the on the refugee program and some of the visa programs.
Yes.
This is fantastic. There's some really logical things in here that I didn't even know they were going to do. One of them, and a lot of people on the right have been calling for this for a long time. It seems trivial, it seems basic, but I think it's important that if you're applying to come to the United States under the visa program, you have to declare that you support the U.S. Constitution over religious edicts, U.S. law over other forms of law, important. Also, it suspends people coming from terror-designated countries. We knew about that one, but here's one that was kind of interesting to me. I didn't know we had this. There's a way to get a visa without an interview. So it's called the Visa Interview Waiver Program. You could actually waive a person-to-person interview and get your visa. Well, he's suspending that for now.
Makes
I think
sense.
that's fantastic. You want a visa? You better show up at a consulate, get in front of someone who is going to at least vet you through his or her eyes. I mean, that's fantastic.
I could see why they would have exceptions to that, though. Like if you're in a dire situation, like there's not necessarily a consulate that you can get to if you have to cross enemy lines to get there.
So there has to be some kind of emergency provision for circumstances like that. But nevertheless, he did make the promise, Greg, during the campaign to say that he was going to engage in extreme vetting and that he was going to halt, temporarily suspend, migration into this country from countries that specifically are under terror watch lists with high potential influx of entry into here from jihadists.
Extreme vetting still sounds like the X Games for refugees.
Yeah.
But the fact is, the world has changed. The only way to preserve the country that people want to come to, that people escape hell to come to, is to vet the people that are potentially coming here now. And I think what the opposition is going to try to do is conflate, I guess, the idea of vetting with Islamophobia. They are going to conflate the idea of decent Muslims with radical Islamist terrorists. By doing that, that means that any attempt that America tries to do to stop ISIS will be seen as somehow against Muslims. That, to me, is bigoted, and that's what you're seeing with CARE and with and the protests that they have started. They're the ones that are actually saying terrorism and Muslims go together, not the people that are trying to do the extreme vetting. They're just saying, let's get the bad guys out.
Separate out the jihadists.
Yeah.
It's not Muslim-specific. Okay. Bob, what do you think?
I think, first of all, let me say, Mattis is probably the best person to be Secretary of Defense at this time in this world. Anybody, Democrat or Republican, I think you guys are terrific. He also makes me feel comfortable because if they spin out of control, which I think could happen, I'd rather have Mattis there than anybody else. The other thing is, when the president talks about upgrading the military, he usually on that campaigned against the F-35, a very expensive, the latest version of the fighter jet forward fighter jet. And he said it was too expensive. Now he's talking about spending and upgrading all this stuff. I agree with you. It's nice. It's a great thought, but it's $1 trillion. By the time you start adding up this guy's week, between the wall that we have to now pay for and the $1 trillion increase in defense spending, where's it going to come from?
But Bob, he's actually saving money ultimately because he is in fact negotiating better deals and not overpaying for tanks, not overpaying for the F-35. So he's saying we're going to do these contracts, which is great because it's good for the economy and it's also good for the men and women that serve. But he's going to do it at a competitive, good price and look at the numbers. That's beneficial.
Here's the fact is
Get more for less.
There are very few competitive industries like the defense complex. They all have their piece of pie and they cut it out for themselves. But anyway,
can I throw a couple of pieces in here? I just read it and I would like to bounce this off Dana. I find this really good on the surface, but if you dig deeper, I'm not sure this is a great idea. Every 180 days under this executive order that he signed, they will release the numbers of foreign-born people in America who've been charged with terror and also the numbers that have been radicalized, they believe, that have been radicalized in the United States. On surface, the transparency area feels great to me. Are we giving away too much information?
I don't know. That does sound different. I mean, if you think about what James Comey, the FBI director, told 60 Minutes last year, that the FBI has open investigations in all 50 states with ISIS-related terror activity or concerns. So I don't know if does that.
It seems like they're going to go further in depth.
But how are they going to figure out who's been radicalized? I mean, that's how does that read? I don't quite understand.
Well, people who've been charged with
terror.
Okay.
No, that's one
level.
They have to
rely on their intelligence reports as well.
Not only charged, but also people they suspect are aiding and abetting terrorists or terrorist
I don't know how you decide
related acts. It's just interesting to me.
But it does say that this order shall be implemented consistent with all applicable law and subject to the availability of appropriations. So everything we're talking about.
And this is the initial framework of it, but it doesn't mean that they can't make subsequent additions or put an addendum to it, make some edits. That's the beauty of it.
I think keep in mind that last thing you just read is on every one of these special these things that he's issued. It's always it has to be in line with law and appropriated.
Oh, really? Because I don't remember Obama being aligned with law and appropriate on a lot of his executive
order. Yes.
Well, exactly. One of them, he signed over 5 million people could stay in the United States, contrary to federal law. I mean, that was one executive order that Obama signed.
But it's a question of the money. Where's the money going to come from? Congress has got to start with money in Congress.
It's nice though that how things have reversed when you hear Democrats asking about money. But I think on both sides,
now they're worried.
Everybody can dial this back because a lot of these things, they're not an imposition. I keep saying this. This isn't like Obamacare, which took your doctor away and redistributed wealth. I mean, that was an imposition.
And charged you more for it.
It's not about lying about a video. It's not about Solyndra. This is not hurting anybody. All it is hyper security that's necessary for a temporary piece of time until we figure things out. How is that bad?
It's a myth. But it's also, let these poor kids come in, these refugee kids.
Oh, of course.
And I'm also glad to see the Doctors Without Borders announced, whether Trump liked it or not, they were going back into Somalia to start treating children, and good for them.
Okay, because he's against children. I mean, come on.
I'm against
children. I didn't say that.
Just Greg is, right? He's on the record. All right, President Trump hopes that Russia will join us in our fight against ISIS, and he's expected to speak on the phone with Vladimir Putin tomorrow. Here's what he said about Russia today.
As far as the sanctions, very early to be talking about that. As far as, again, Putin and Russia, I don't say good, bad, or indifferent. I don't know the gentleman. I hope we have a fantastic relationship. That's possible, and it's also possible that we won't. If we have a great relationship with Russia and other countries, and if we go after ISIS together, which has to be stopped, that's an evil that has to be stopped, I will consider that a good thing, not a bad thing.
All right, Dana, so the messaging here, it seems pretty measured. He's saying, I don't know the guy. I hope that we would have a good relationship, work together, and I would certainly like to partner with him in the fight against radical terror.
I don't know how you would oppose what Donald Trump just said. As a candidate, you might have been frustrated with him on Russia, but what he just said as president is, I don't know. We'll see. I thought that he came at it today with a little bit of a skeptical view, but not one that was a defeatist view. So I thought that was a good answer.
So he hit the right tone on that. Eric, did you like it?
I did. And so there's a whole era, there's a whole age of people who believe that we need to be enemies with Russia, who fear Russia, maybe appropriately, I'm not sure. But can we have an open mind? Can we at least give them a chance that maybe they aren't out to destroy us and kill us? Maybe I'm being foolish, or maybe I'm not. Here's my issue, though. President Trump says he's going to sign these orders. He's going to have this phone call with Putin tomorrow. And already some people on the right, some congressmen and senators are saying, it doesn't matter what this conversation is about, we're still going to push forward for sanctions and maybe even additional sanctions. My point is let the guy have his conversation and let him come and present it to Congress.
And explore the leverage, perhaps, because Putin does want those sanctions to be lifted. And now we see where we go from here.
Yeah, but just remember, these are multinational sanctions, and the President of the United States can't lift sanctions on his own. It's got to be done through the Congress and in consultation with his allies. Can he apply them?
No,
can he what?
Can he apply sanctions?
Can he apply additional sanctions?
Yeah.
No,
well, Obama did. That's the point. Obama applied additional sanctions.
Can you let that go? Really, it's past.
No, my point is he can roll back those sanctions that Obama just put on 2 weeks ago.
He's got to be very careful about this because already the Speaker of the House, a Republican, John McCain, have said if you lift sanctions or try to talk nice about them,
that's a different story.
That's
a different story.
Why is that a different story?
Because President Obama stuck sanctions on Russia as he was leaving the White House.
He
Remember
didn't.
that?
The world community did.
No, he did. He did. That aside from the international sanctions that were in place, Obama threw some on at the last minute.
That was your week off.
And those are the sanctions Trump could roll back, even if symbolically just roll back.
You've gotten awfully soft on commies, haven't you?
Oh, my gosh. All right, Greg.
I get if you pretended that, I mean, I don't understand why this is actually an issue, because every new administration does this sort of thing. I mean, I hate to bring up that cute little red reset button, but that, you know, maybe if Donald Trump had a little prop with him, a little tiny hammer and sickle, that would be okay. But I think it's like, this is what your presidents are allowed to do, you know, and if it doesn't go right, it doesn't go right. But for now, what's the problem?
I just found out that the ACLU has just issued a statement saying that extreme vetting, as described in the executive order the president just signed, that extreme vetting is just a euphemism for discrimination against Muslims.
There you go. I just said that.
All right, well, they'll get some new clients off of that.
You wrote the ACLU statement.
Exactly.
But they're so predictable.
Yeah, I know.
He's the new spokesperson for the
It would be if it was about Muslims, but it's about
regions.
Terror or places where terror resides.
Well, let's be frank, it's about Islam.
You can make the distinction, but it's about radical Islam.
It's about a doctrine that's being used to harm others.
Hey, can we also keep in mind that it was the Russians that went in and took over in the Ukraine and murdered thousands of people, dropped bombs on people, and now we talk about partners in Iraq or in Syria? Are you kidding me? Yeah. The Russians are bombing the hell out of all of Bashir's opponents. I mean, it's nonsensical.
It's a fair point.
I agree.
It's messy.
Huh?
Yeah, it's messy.
It's messy. Maybe that's what they got to talk about.